I want to welcome you to Dream Chasers Radio with me, your host, Yaya Diamond. What's up, peoples? How you doing? It is a great day, and I am telling you, this woman that's coming on the show, I am telling you, she looks so good, and I feel like my little T-shirt with my little superhero thing is just underdressed, but she's so beautiful, and I want to welcome Miss Doris to the show. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, and it's my pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So tell us about yourself.
Actually, I've spent my career in nursing education. At my last job, I was Dean and Professor of Nursing, as well as the founding director of a community health clinic run by the School of Nursing. And this was at Coppin State University in Baltimore.
Wow. Wow. So then now, okay, so after all of that, and just that's just commendable. Thank you so much for your, helping people. I'm sure that you've saved truly many lives, and that's just amazing. But then you wrote a book. Tell me
Yes,
about
well,
this.
I've always liked to write, and in my job as head of nursing schools, I've used those skills to write grants. As I might have mentioned, I wrote a grant that was funded by the U.S. Public Health Service for $1.1 million, and I used it to establish a community health clinic at Coppin. So it's staffed by nurse practitioners on our faculty, and also a physician that we hired, and we collaborate with providers in the community. And that has been going on since the early 90s, and it still is. So I'm very
Wow.
proud of that. Plus, there was always writing to be done with regard to reports and accreditation papers. So that's, but I did a little bit of creative writing, but in terms of building a strategic plan for myself, I thought I would use these years as a time to do something like that for myself.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. Oh, wow. That's just wow. That's wow. I just,
Um,
the skill to write a grant, the skill
mhm.
to bring people together and use that money for good. That's just amazing. I commend you. Thank you so much. Wow. And so the book, okay, so John Brown. Tell me about
Yeah,
this. John Brown, it says the last days of John Brown, the abolitionist. And now I hope I said that right.
that's correct. That's correct. Maybe we should define abolitionist first.
Yeah, definitely.
Abolitionist is one who was against slavery and devoted his life to the abolition of cessation thereof.
Hmm.
And I don't think that a lot of people are aware of John Brown. I happen to live in Charlestown, West Virginia, and
Hmm.
this is where John Brown was hanged. I vote in the same courtroom where he was tried. And oftentimes, Mr. Brown has been portrayed as a religious zealot and a domestic terrorist. So
Mm.
what I tried to do was go back and look at the records in the archives and see what really happened and try to bring some balance and the truth to this. And one might have a different perspective if he or she was in Charlestown and maybe was affected by the raid at Harper's Ferry, which is 6 miles away. But if you have a grandmother and grandfather who are enslaved in Alabama, you might have thought he was a different kind of person. So I tried to go into his mind and see what motivated him to conduct this raid.
Mm. Mm.
And then the
And so
reader
that's in the
is
book, right?
in the book, yes.
That's in the book. Wow. Okay.
Yes, it's in the book, and it's like going into his mind.
Mm.
Because some people have even thought that John Brown was Black, but he was not. He was a Caucasian, very religious man, and he thought that his religious principles kind of clashed with the practice of slavery, and he called it the sin of slavery. And so that was his motivating factor. But there's also a particular incident in the book where an event happens that Mr. Brown sees when he's a young man. It was involving cruelty to this African boy of, what we'll say, of African descent. And thereafter, Brown decides to dedicate his life to the abolition of such a cruel practice.
Mm, mm. And he was hanged for it.
Oh, yes. He was hanged for, the charges were for 3 reasons: insurrection of the slaves, murder, and treason. And yes, Charlestown was then in the state of Virginia, and Charlestown was one word, and it didn't separate from the state of Virginia until after the Civil War. But Mr. Brown had tried to warn people that if they didn't do something about the practice of slavery, that it could lead to war. So he was hanged in 1859, and the Civil War started in 1861. It was 16 months later. So you could see he probably was a prophet. If they had listened to him, maybe things would have been different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Wow, wow, wow. And so you wanted to bring to light that, you know, this gentleman of Caucasian persuasion was actually convinced that slavery was not something that should have been done.
Oh yes, he was convinced. Now he had a plan, and I don't necessarily want to reveal everything that's
Of course not. I don't suggest you do.
But he had it all figured out. And I tried to inform people of the background information. For instance, Mr. Brown was affiliated with Oberlin College, and he had been sent by Oberlin to scout some land near Harper's Ferry. The Harper's Ferry is nestled in the bottom, surrounded by high mountain peaks. And so Brown thought that, and this evolved from a meeting he had with some white and Black people in Canada a few years earlier. And he told them some of his plan, that he wanted to establish a separate state for escaped slaves or those who had freed themselves to live in the Appalachian Mountains. And he needed weapons to do that. And he had gotten some supporters who are called the Secret Six. These are people who had money, but they didn't want their names to be made public. But he still needed some weapons to arm people as they escaped from slavery. And so his plan was to raid the armory, which was the National Army that had been established by George Washington, and get enough of these weapons so that he could free the people in the immediate vicinity and then go southward and help others. But that would be a separate state in the Appalachian Mountains, which was ideal because it had overhanging branches and flowers growing out of crevices and caves. That would have been what he thought was a good place. So that's why he raided the armory.
Wow. Wow. So this man went all the way and gave his life for his belief that Blacks, African Americans, or African at that time,
yes,
should not be enslaved.
That's right. And there were other things operating at that time, such as far as the federal government was concerned, they're not being willing to count enslaved persons or Black people for more than 3/5 of a person. In other words, we were not a total person. And my thought is, my feeling is that we are still enduring the legacy of slavery, the legacy of what was decided at that time.
Yes.
And it's manifested. If you want me to pause and let you speak, I'll do that.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's evident, the legacy of slavery is evident in disparities in all areas of life for African Americans. That would be health, education, economics, and education. All of those we have disparities because we were not allowed the same privileges as other people. Now, they might not call it treating you as 3/5 of a person, but when communities are and cities are gerrymandered, in other words, you cut out of certain voting districts, that's making you 3/5 or less of a person.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And it still is going on today.
Yes, it is. And
It really is.
is clear, say to me, like the data we discovered during the epidemic of the COVID crisis. We had more people affected by that. And this is going a little bit beyond the scope of the book, but I'm working on another book and maybe I'll cover it in that one. But we were, after Sherman led his raid through Georgia, he and President Lincoln decided on a plan to repay Black people for their enslavement. And the plan was to give everybody 40 acres and a mule. That would have been the beginning of generational wealth. But instead, we know that Lincoln was murdered shortly after that. And when the new president came in, then white Southerners were able to convince the president that they were the ones who had suffered because of the loss of their property, which was enslaved people, and that they should be reimbursed. So all of that was reversed. Black people never got their 40 acres and a mule. And that's what you call reparations.
Huh. I know about that too. My
Mhm.
gosh. And so Mr. Brown, he fought for all of this.
Oh, he was an unbelievable person.
Mm.
He considered himself bound with those who were in bondage. That's what made him so unusual. But he probably he had underestimated how hard people would fight to keep their property. And he was involved with other abolitionists, such as Frederick Douglass, and Harriet Tubman had promised to go along with him on the raid, but she was sick on the day that he left. And he subsequently thought that if she had been with him, she could have guided him and given him advice because she had a lot of, it seems, precognitive kinds of abilities, but she wasn't there to help him.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, this book is it's got to be a history book. They should put this in the schools.
I think so. And
Yeah.
I'm aware that there are people who are trying to remove certain books, but the truth has to be told. We must get back to our core values of integrity and truth.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't, we're lost, we will lose our democracy. We must examine what happened in the past in order to plan for the future.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. Wow. Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And I want people to know, how can they get this book? How can they get Last Days of John Brown by, Miss Doris Starks there?
You can get it on Amazon or at any other bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelf, they will order it for you. But especially you get it in a day or two if you order through Amazon.
Right. Wow, that's wonderful. Miss Stark, so you said you have another book that you're working on.
I am. I am. One has to be able to do something in retirement. We live long enough now to have 2 careers.
Yes, ma'am. More than 2.
Yeah, I graduated from high school at 15
Wow.
from Tuskegee Institute High School.
Mm.
And then went on there and finished nursing school and taught at Tuskegee. I've done a number of things. I've been in the Army Nurse Corps, but largely I've been in nursing education.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, and you're right. We do live a lot longer and
Yeah.
have more things that we can do. I mean, things really aren't finished.
Right.
Retirement is just means that, okay, I'm finished with that. Now what?
Of course, you shift gears. And now that we have access to better healthcare, we take care of ourselves, we can be productive in those years.
Yeah.
And so mine was just a matter of, what do I do next? So again, my core values are service to others and do unto others as I would have them do unto me, which is the same core value that John Brown had.
Wow. Well, I mean, we got to read up on John Brown now. You guys, I'm going to put that information in the description box below so that you can go ahead and grab that easily and get on over there and check that book out for yourself. You know, Ms. Starks, if you had any suggestions or any kind of advice for those people coming up, you know, or even the older person, maybe they retired and they don't know what to do, what would you tell them?
Well, I used to teach a course on aging and find out about how to keep yourself healthy. And there are community resources who tend to do that. And you can start with your primary care physician or whomever you have to provide your health care. And they will refer you because hospitals and other community agencies have resources. And every state has a office on aging. And they can tell you where the aging centers are and give you advice on nutrition, exercise, and everything to help you live a fruitful life, because we do want to leave the best world we can for those who come after us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Starks, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. And don't forget to check out that book that's in the description box below. I'm telling you, you got to go check it out. If you haven't heard of this or haven't heard of Mr. John, you need to go ahead and find out about him today. So I'll see you guys later and bye. That's just amazing.
Much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Starks. Thank you.
Yeah. You are kidding.
I did to be different. I did.